Hello and welcome to Sea Silk Stories. Dim the lights, settle beneath the blankets and allow yourself to drift into another world. This is the story of the Dewdrop Queen and the girl who could hear petals open. A soft bedtime fairy tale for gentle nights. There is a moment just before morning when the world becomes so quiet that even the smallest things begin to speak. Not loudly, not in words, but in soft, delicate ways that can only be heard by those who have remembered how to listen. This is a story about one such listener, a woman named Seraphine, and the morning when the flowers began speaking back. Seraphine lived at the edge of a meadow that most people no longer noticed. It wasn't hidden, not exactly, but it was easy to overlook, like something beautiful that didn't ask to be seen. Her cottage was small, wrapped in climbing roses that bloomed in soft shades of blush and cream. The windows were always slightly open, the curtains, light, gauzy, moved even when the air was still. Inside, everything felt gentle, worn wood, warm light. Teacups that had been used so often, they seemed to hold warmth even when empty. Seraphine's life was quiet, not lonely, not sad, but quiet in a way that suggested something had once been louder, brighter, more alive. She tended her garden each day, watered the flowers, trimmed their stems, pressed her fingers into the soil as if trying to remember something she couldn't quite reach. And every morning, before the sun rose, she woke. At first she thought it was the wind, a soft, barely there sound, like fabric shifting. But there was no wind. The sound came again, closer, more precise. A faint unfolding. Seraphine sat up in bed. The room was dim, painted in soft pre-dawn blue. She held her breath, listened, and there it was, again, a petal opening. She stood slowly, wrapped herself in a thin shawl, and moved toward the window. Outside, the meadow shimmered faintly, covered in dew, each droplet catching the earliest hints of light. The sound came again, and this time, she followed it. Barefoot, Seraphine stepped into the grass. It was cool, damp, alive. The dew kissed her skin like something intentional, soft. She moved slowly, carefully, listening. And with each step, she began to hear more. Tiny sounds, delicate, layered. Petals unfurling, stems stretching, soft, almost imperceptible sighs as blossoms opened to the morning. Her breath caught. It wasn't imagination. The meadow was speaking, and she could hear it. It appeared where the light gathered most, at the center of a pale pink bloom. Something moved. Seraphine leaned closer, and there, resting in the gentle curve of the flower, was a fairy, small, no larger than her palm. Her wings were thin and translucent, like petals touched by light. Her body shimmered faintly, soft gold, soft rose. She stirred, opened her eyes, and looked directly at Seraphine. "You heard us," the fairy said. Her voice was barely louder than the sound of dew sliding from a leaf. Seraphine didn't step back, didn't question. She only whispered, "Yes." The fairy smiled. "Then it has begun." As the sun began to rise, the meadow changed, not dramatically, not all at once, but gently. Colours deepened, light softened, and the space between things widened. Seraphine blinked, and suddenly she could see them. Fairies, dozens, then hundreds, resting inside blossoms, floating between stems, dancing lightly across dewdrops that held their weight like glass. Some tended to petals, smoothing them, guiding them open. Others gathered dew, carefully, reverently, placing each drop into tiny vessels made of woven light. "What are they doing?" Seraphine asked softly. The fairy beside her rose into the air, her wings catching the light. "They are keeping the world soft," she said. The fairy led her deeper into the meadow, to a place where the flowers grew taller, closer, more luminous. There, the dew was different. Each droplet glowed faintly from within. "Look," the fairy whispered. Seraphine leaned closer. Inside the droplet, she saw something. A moment, a child laughing, a hand brushing gently against another, a quiet morning filled with warmth. Seraphine's breath softened. "Memories," she whispered. The fairy nodded. "Not just memories," she said. "Feelings." She cupped a droplet carefully. "When something beautiful is felt, but not held onto, it comes here." At the very heart of the meadow, there was a clearing, and in its centre, resting upon a throne of woven stems and light, was the queen. She was fading. Her form was made of morning itself, soft gold, blush pink, silver dew, but the light within her flickered, like a flame struggling to remain. "She is the dewdrop queen," the fairy said quietly. "She holds the balance of softness in the world." Seraphine stepped closer. The queen's eyes opened slowly. They were kind, ancient, tired. "You hear us?" she whispered. Seraphine knelt. "I do," she said. The queen reached out, her hand light as mist, and touched Seraphine's chest. And in that moment, Seraphine felt it. Everything she had pushed away, everything she had numbed, everything she had forgotten how to feel. It rushed back, gently, like something returning home. "The world is forgetting," the queen said softly. "Not in loud ways, not in ways that can be seen, but in small ways. The softness, the quiet joy, the delicate moments that ask nothing but mean everything. And without those," she closed her eyes briefly, "I cannot remain." Seraphine stayed, not out of obligation, but because something inside her had awakened. Each morning she walked the meadow. She listened, not just to the flowers, but to herself. She let herself feel the coolness of dew, the warmth of sunlight, the softness of petals brushing her skin. At first it was overwhelming. Then it became something else, beautiful. The fairies noticed first, the way the dew grew brighter, the way the flowers opened more fully, and slowly the queen began to glow again, faintly. Then more. Each feeling Seraphine allowed, each moment she truly experienced, fed the meadow, fed the queen. "You cannot stay forever," the queen said gently one morning. Seraphine knew the world beyond the meadow still existed, still waited. "But you can carry this with you," the Queen added. She placed a single dewdrop into Seraphine's hands. It glowed, soft, warm. "Remember," she said. Seraphine returned to her cottage, but everything felt different. The world was no longer distant, it was close. The smallest things, the quietest moments, held meaning again, and each morning, before the sun rose, she listened, and somewhere, just beneath the surface of the world, the petals opened, softly, and the fairies still kept the world gentle. There are soft things in this world that do not need to be chased, only noticed, only felt, and when you are quiet enough, they will find you, like dew, like petals, like something small and beautiful, opening in the dark, the end. The Pegasus Keeper of the lavender sky. There are skies above the world that no bird has ever crossed, places where clouds drift slowly like silk through warm water, and the air smells faintly of lavender and rain. Most people never see them. They only appear to those whose hearts have become quiet enough to notice gentle things again. Far above the sleeping world, beyond the reach of storms and stars, there floated a series of enormous cloud gardens suspended in the endless twilight sky. The gardens stretched for miles in every direction, connected by delicate bridges woven from silver vines and moonlit threads. Lavender fields rippled softly across the clouds like oceans of pale violet silk. Crystal streams wound through the gardens, glowing faintly with blue light beneath the mist. And drifting peacefully through it all were the pegasi, winged horses with shimmering coats and feathered wings that glowed softly in the dusk. Some were pearl white, others silver blue like moonlight on water. A few rare ones carried hints of blush pink or soft gold along their manes. When they flew, tiny particles of starlight scattered behind them like floating dust. And among them lived a young woman named Veta. Veta had spent nearly all her life in the floating gardens. She lived in a small cottage perched near the edge of the clouds, where the sky opened into endless glowing horizon. The cottage was wrapped in climbing lavender vines and soft white flowers that only bloomed at night. Wind chimes made from crystal shells swayed gently outside her windows. Inside, everything glowed warmly. Cream-colored blankets rested across curved chairs. Small lanterns filled with bottled moonlight floated near the ceiling. Bundles of dried lavender hung from wooden beams, filling the air with a soft, calming scent. Every morning, Veta woke before dawn, because the pegasi liked to greet the sunrise. She would step barefoot onto the warm cloud paths, carrying baskets of glowing skyberries and silver pears. The pegasi gathered around her immediately. Some nudged her shoulder affectionately, others folded their wings around her gently while she laughed softly into their feathered necks. They trusted her completely, and she loved them with the quiet tenderness reserved for creatures too beautiful to belong entirely to the world. Among them all, one Pegasus was closest to her. His name was Solis. He was enormous compared to the others, with luminous cream-colored wings tipped in pale gold. His mane shimmered faintly like sunlight through fog, and unlike the others, Solis rarely flew with the herd. Instead, he stayed near Veta constantly, watching her with intelligent golden eyes, as though he understood every thought she never spoke aloud. At night, he rested beside her cottage beneath the lavender sky while tiny starlight birds nested within his wings. The floating gardens were peaceful, soft, timeless, but they were also lonely. Though Veta loved the sky, there were evenings when she would stand at the edge of the clouds and look down toward the distant world below. Far beneath her stretched forests, oceans, villages, and glowing cities flickering softly in the dark. Sometimes she wondered what it would feel like to belong somewhere beyond the clouds. To be seen not as a keeper or caretaker, but simply as someone loved. One evening, as dusk painted the sky in shades of lavender and rose gold, the herd became restless. The pegasi lifted their heads suddenly, wings fluttered nervously, soft, anxious sounds spread through the gardens. Veta immediately felt it too. Something was wrong. Then Solus stepped forward toward the horizon. A deep sound rumbled softly in his chest. Warning. Far in the distance, something moved through the clouds, fast, unsteady. A Pegasus. Its wings beat unevenly against the wind as it descended toward the gardens. Golden feathers scattered behind it like sparks, and clinging weakly to its back was someone unconscious. The creature crashed gently into the lavender fields moments later. The other Pegasi scattered anxiously as Veta ran forward. The golden Pegasus lay trembling among the flowers. One of its wings was injured badly, streaked with silver blood that shimmered faintly against the clouds. And beside it, a young man slowly stirred awake. His dark hair was tangled from the wind. His clothing was torn from travel. But when he opened his eyes, Veta noticed immediately how gentle they looked. Soft, grey-blue like rain clouds before dawn. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The lavender fields swayed quietly around them. Tiny glowing moths drifted through the mist. And somewhere above, the evening stars began to appear. Then the young man looked at the wounded Pegasus beside him. Pain crossed his face immediately. "Please," he whispered hoarsely, "help her." The Pegasus's name was Aurelia. Veta learned this while carefully tending to her injured wing inside the healing gardens. The healing gardens rested at the quietest edge of the floating world, where waterfalls poured endlessly into glowing sky rivers below. Soft moss covered the cloud floor there. Moonflowers opened slowly in the evening mist, and tiny cloud foxes slept curled beside warm crystal stones. Calum stayed close to Aurelia constantly. He barely slept, barely rested. Each time Aurelia stirred in pain, he was immediately beside her, speaking softly, running gentle fingers through her shimmering mane. Veta watched him quietly during those first few days. There was tenderness in the way he cared for her, a deep love that felt rare and ancient, like devotion untouched by selfishness. One evening, while glowing lantern moths drifted through the garden streams, Veta finally asked him the question she had been holding since his arrival. "How did you find this place?" Calum looked toward the endless sky. For a long moment he said nothing, then he smiled faintly. "I wasn't looking for it," he admitted softly. He glanced toward Aurelia. "She found me years ago during a storm near the northern cliffs. She was injured then, too." His voice softened further. "I helped her heal, and afterward she kept returning." Veta listened quietly. The waterfalls hummed gently around them. Lavender mist curled through the air. "One night," Calum continued, She appeared and refused to leave. No matter where I walked, she followed. He laughed softly, and eventually she brought me here. Veta smiled for the first time in days. The Pegasi choose carefully, she said. I know, he replied, and when he looked at her, something inside her chest shifted softly like the first flutter of wings. As Aurelia healed, the days grew softer, warmer, fuller somehow. Calum remained within the floating gardens, helping Veta care for the Pegasi. Together they gathered moonfruit beneath glowing trees. They brushed stardust from Pegasus wings after evening flights. They walked slowly through endless lavender fields while warm cloud winds wrapped around them gently. At night, they sat beside the edge of the world, watching the sky deepen into indigo velvet. Sometimes the Pegasi flew overhead in slow, graceful arcs, scattering light across the clouds like drifting fireflies. And during those quiet nights, Veta found herself speaking more than she had in years. About the gardens, about loneliness, about the strange ache of loving beautiful things that never truly belong to you. Calum listened carefully every time, not rushing to answer, not trying to fix her sadness, only listening, and somehow that made the loneliness inside her feel lighter. One evening, while they rested beneath floating lantern blossoms, Calum looked toward her quietly. You've spent your whole life caring for creatures made of sky, he said softly. But who takes care of you? The question caught her off guard. Veta looked down into her hands. The answer, she realized quietly, was no one. Each year, when the twin moons aligned above the floating gardens, the Pegasi held what Veta called the Sky Festival. It was the only night the entire herd flew together, hundreds of glowing winged creatures filling the sky at once. The clouds themselves shimmered beneath their light. The gardens transformed completely for the festival. Crystal lanterns floated between flower bridges. Silver ribbons drifted from the trees. Warm music carried softly through the lavender air. Even the stars seemed closer somehow. Veta wore a flowing gown woven from moon silk and pale lavender threads. Tiny glowing flowers rested within her hair. When she stepped into the gardens that evening, Calum stared at her quietly for several seconds before speaking. You look like you belong to the sky itself, he whispered. Warmth bloomed across her cheeks immediately, and for the first time in a very long while, she felt beautiful. As the festival reached its height, Solis approached Veta quietly, then lowered himself beside her. Invitation. Veta smiled softly and climbed onto his back. Beside them, Aurelia knelt for Calum. The two Pegasi launched upward together into the endless glowing sky. Below them, the cloud gardens shimmered like scattered pearls. Above them, the stars stretched endlessly across the heavens. The wind wrapped around them softly, carrying the scent of lavender and rain. Veta laughed as Solis soared higher. The sound surprised even her. It felt light, free. Beside her, Calum reached out carefully. Their hands met in the air between them, warm fingers intertwining gently against the rushing sky. And somewhere deep inside her, something long asleep began to bloom, long after the festival ended, long after the lanterns dimmed and the stars softened into dawn. Veta stood once more at the edge of the floating gardens, but this time she was not alone. Calum stood beside her quietly. Solis rested nearby, and far below them the world glowed softly beneath the clouds. For years, Veta had believed love would feel dramatic, overwhelming, like storms or fire. But standing there beneath the lavender sky, she realized love could also feel like this: gentle, steady, warm as moonlight resting on clouds. And somewhere overhead, the pegasi continued flying through the endless dawn, scattering starlight behind their wings like drifting dreams. The end. This is the story of the Rosewater Lake and the sleeping merfolk court. There are places in the world that are not meant to be found, not because they are hidden, but because they wait for the right kind of heart, a heart that has been quieted, softened, opened, not by joy, but by something deeper. This is the story of such a place, a lake the colour of rose petals, a kingdom beneath its surface, and a woman who wandered there when she no longer knew where else to go. Her name was Elira, and for a long time she had lived as though her life was something she was simply passing through. She did not rush, did not chase, did not expect much from the world anymore. There had been a time when she felt everything too deeply, too brightly, love that filled her completely, hope that stretched endlessly forward. But something had changed. Not suddenly, not violently, just quietly, like a light dimming over time until you forgot how bright it had once been. So she began walking, not toward anything, just away, through fields, through quiet towns, through places that did not ask her to stay, until one evening, as the sky softened into shades of blush and lavender, she found it. At first, she thought it was light, a shimmer between the trees, soft, pink, almost glowing. She stepped closer, and the forest opened. There, cradled in a quiet hollow, was a lake unlike anything she had ever seen. Its surface was not blue, not green, but rose, soft, translucent, petal-toned water that moved gently as though breathing. Mist rose from it in delicate ribbons, carrying the faint scent of flowers, warm, sweet, almost familiar. Elira stood at the edge, barefoot, silent. The world seemed to hold its breath, and for the first time in a long while, so did she. She knelt slowly, dipped her fingers into the water. It was warm, not like sunlight, not like air, but like something remembering her. The moment her skin touched the surface, ripples spread outward, not quickly or sharply, but gently, as if the lake itself were waking, and then something moved beneath. At first, it was only a shimmer, a distortion of light. Then shapes, figures, dozens of them, silent, resting beneath the surface. Elira leaned closer, her breath catching. They were people. No, not people. Merfolk. Their forms graceful, elongated, hair drifting like silk through water, skin faintly luminous, tails curled gently beneath them like petals folded in sleep. An entire court, frozen, dreaming or waiting. As Elira watched, one of them stirred, barely. A flicker of movement, a shift in the water. Then eyes opened, soft and golden, The mermaid rose slowly, breaking the surface without a sound. Water slid from her shoulders like liquid light. She looked at Elira, not with surprise, but with recognition. "You found us," she said softly. Her voice sounded like water moving over smooth stone. Elira swallowed. "I didn't mean to." The mermaid smiled faintly. "No one ever does." "My name is Lysara," the mermaid said. She gestured toward the lake. "We are the Rosewater Court." Elira looked again at the still forms below. "Why are they sleeping?" Lysara's expression softened. "Because the world above stopped remembering us." She lowered herself back into the water slightly. "When we are remembered, when we are felt, we live. When we are forgotten," her voice quieted, "we rest." Lysara reached into the water, lifted a handful of it. It shimmered between her fingers. "This lake holds what is felt deeply," she said. "Love, longing, beauty, grief." Elira's chest tightened slightly. "When people feel these things fully, truly, it flows here." "And when they stop?" Elira whispered. The water dimmed slightly. "We fade." "You woke me," Lysara said. Elira shook her head. "I didn't do anything." "You came," Lysara replied gently, "and you felt." Elira looked down at the water, at the soft glow beneath the surface. "I don't feel much anymore," she admitted. Lysara studied her. "Then perhaps that is why you were led here." Elira stayed. "Because leaving felt incomplete." Each day she returned to the edge of the lake, sat with her feet in the water, and listened. Lysara would rise beside her. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't, but slowly, very slowly, something began to change. It began with small things. The warmth of the water around her ankles, the softness of the breeze across her skin, the way the light moved through the lake at sunset. Each sensation lingered just a little longer, reached just a little deeper, and one evening, Elira felt something break open inside her, like a door that had been closed for too long, finally giving way. The lake responded immediately. Light surged through the water, soft at first, then brighter. Below the surface, the merfolk stirred. One by one, they began to wake, hair drifting, hands uncurling, eyes opening slowly like flowers at dawn. The water shimmered in hues of rose, gold, and pale blue. The court was returning. Lysara rose fully now, stronger, brighter. "You see?" she said softly. Elira nodded, tears slipping quietly down her face. "I thought I had lost this," she whispered. Lysara reached out, her fingers brushing Elira's hand. "You did not lose it," she said. "You only forgot how to let it stay." "You can remain," Lysara said one evening, "here where everything is felt deeply." Elira looked out across the lake, at the glowing water, the awakened court, the softness of everything around her. Then she looked beyond, at the world waiting outside the trees. "I think," she said slowly, "I need to take this back with me." Lysara smiled. She cupped the lake water in her hands. It gathered into a single glowing drop, a rose-tinted jewel of light. "For when you forget again," she said gently. Elira took it. It was warm, alive. Elira left the lake, but the softness did not leave her. The world felt different now, brighter, warmer, closer. And sometimes, when the light is just right and the air carries the faint scent of roses, you might feel it, a quiet pull. And somewhere, hidden just beyond where the world feels ordinary, the Rosewater Lake waits, its surface breathing, its court dreaming, and its waters still holding every feeling. The world has not yet forgotten. Rest now. You do not need to hold everything. What is meant for you, what is soft, what is true, will return like water, like light, like something blooming quietly beneath the surface of your heart. The end.
you.